Josh, thank you. Good evening. Your headlines at 11 o'clock. Russia has responded to Donald Trump's ultimatum to end the war in Ukraine. The US president said Russia will face high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions if President Putin does not end the war. Posting on his Truth Social, Trump expressed his love for the Russian people and his good relationship with Putin, and then issued a direct warning to stop this ridiculous war. Russia's UN envoy has said the Kremlin would need to see what Trump thinks is a deal comprises of before proceeding. It's not merely the question of ending the war, he said. It's first and foremost a question of addressing root causes of the Ukrainian crisis. 1 in 12 of the population in London is an illegal immigrant, according to a previously confidential report. The new estimate has emerged in a study commissioned by Thames Water, obtained by the Telegraph newspaper under a Freedom of Information request. In total, there are estimated to be more than 1 million illegal migrants in the UK, with 60% of those in the capital. The report suggests most illegal migrants arrived in the UK on work, study or visitor visas and then overstayed. An Afghan migrant who stabbed a 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man to death in a German park was supposed to have left the country. The 28-year-old Afghan national deliberately attacked a kindergarten group in the park with a kitchen knife, leaving 2 dead and 2 injured. The Bavarian Interior Minister said the suspect was undergoing psychiatric treatment and had his asylum process closed and was supposed to have left the country. He added that the suspect did not appear to be motivated by radical Islam. Meanwhile, people have begun to gather and protest with a placard reading, "We won't let diversity kill us." The stabbing adds to a string of violent attacks in Germany that have raised concerns over security and stirred up tensions over migration. And the owner of The Sun newspaper has issued a full and unequivocal apology to Prince Harry for serious privacy violations and has agreed to pay him substantial damages, settling a long-running legal battle just as it was set to go to court. The apology also extends to the late Princess Diana, acknowledging intrusion into her private life. Former Labour Deputy Leader Tom Watson also received an apology for unwarranted intrusion during his time in government. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. It sure is time for Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with 3 top comedians. I include myself in that, of course. Let's kick off with a look at some of the front pages. The Telegraph: 1 in 12 in London is an illegal migrant. The Daily Mail: nuclear sub warns off Putin's spy ship. And The Guardian: Prince claims historic win over son owner after settling intrusion case. Well, we've got more front pages in just a second, but Steve, what do you make of Thursday's Daily Telegraph with the most GB News headline of the week?
1 in 12 in London is an illegal migrant, which means, I know this is not how stats work, but if you're on a bus, you can see 11 people and they're all not illegal migrants. It means it's you. That's not how stats work, and
Stop confusing me, Steve. Straight off the bat with your stupid maths.
Look, illegal's the key word. What's the point in having a system if you're not going to deploy the system? This is not a debate about migration numbers, net migration, which is the debate that we would have on probably the next story. But the idea of, I mean, this is illegal. This is not... No one's voted for this. No one's thought illegal is a good idea. And when you get to the numbers of 1 in 12, back to that bus, there's more than 12 people on a bus. So, like, through your everyday life, if you're in London, you're going to walk past a lot. Can I just say my favourite thing about the story, though, is that we don't actually get Home Office stats on this. This comes from a piece of research commissioned by Thames Water. Why do Thames Water...
Those social justice warriors...
They think they don't wash. Is that...
They do say it. They do say, actually. They say they did it to try and quantify the hidden and transient users of their service.
Stuff into it. Well, Paul, Steve makes a very interesting point there. I would maybe disagree with just a little bit, if you don't mind, in that he says that people didn't vote for this, right? Yet the last government, certainly after Boris Johnson, brought in 1 million people and didn't really care about it. If they're just bringing in 1 million people legally, surely that means that they're not that bothered about the illegal stuff, because a lot of this is actually, I know we constantly sing about the boats and whatnot, but really a lot of it is people overstaying their visas and things like that.
Potentially, we don't know really, do we?
The article said it.
Yeah.
They don't stop crews going to our rivers, but they do look at this.
What they believe is about 585,000 people are... That's a whole lot of illegals, by the way. However they manifest themselves, there's a whole lot of illegals. And anecdotally, there are 1 million across the UK, so that adds up to about 60% of all the illegals in the UK are in London.
You're not going to outmath Steve.
No, I'm not trying to. I'm not going to.
You can start doing questions.
I think statistics like this, they're going to drive, they're going to dominate the political conjecture over the next couple of months now. I mean, straight away, this is fodder for reform. They're going to be all over this. They're going to be straight into these statistics. It's a huge issue because it's a drain on our resources, whatever that might be.
Well, the two things are, speaking of resources, there are claims that we had recently that the NHS was prioritising illegal migrants, number one, and also the fact that there isn't this data. And when the Home Office isn't even seemingly collecting it, let alone publishing it, how do we can't sort the problem out if we don't know what the problem is?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
Thank you so much. There's another story. I'm sorry, if you can do the farm tax one.
Farm tax raid puts food security at risk, warns Tesco.
Oh, no.
And this is Tesco. I mean, how much do they love farmers? They barely pay them. I think that's... they don't love... Who else are they going to exploit now?
Let us rip them off. you leave them alone, OK?
But, I mean, I don't want to rehash the debate that I'm sure we've had before about, yes, if you upset farmers, they make the food. I like food. That's obvious for anyone who's not listening on DAB. I love a bit of food. You don't want to upset the people who like the food. Even Tesco agree with me now.
Well, this is all the supermarkets agree. And the other thing about it, Paul, is that they say that this tax actually is not going to have such a great impact in the long term because the farmers will adapt to it. It's going to catch these farmers in the short term who haven't prepared for this, but in the future they're just going to be leaving stuff earlier before they get sick, right?
Yeah, it's not just terrible optics, it's terrible politics as well. Even with freezing old people to death, that they are only raising 1.4 billion doing that, which I know is a lot. If we were getting paid that per show, we'd be quite happy. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not big money. And the same with the farmers' tax, it's not big money. But the overall optics and politics of it are hugely impactful for Labour, and it's going to rumble on forever.
But I don't know if it is in terms of. I mean, I don't understand who they're doing this for. If it's only going to raise a few hundred million, then this ideology element of it, which I think is what you're alluding to, over actually like the reality that we need to sort of pay more bills for the government, is it doesn't. I don't think people are even going to be that supportive of it. Like if I was like a proper far left crank, I wouldn't necessarily be going, yeah, we're going to get those farmers. Like, yippee.
Yeah.
There are other causes to fight.
Yeah, no one was protesting. Before the election, there was no one going, I hope they managed to sort out that inheritance tax loophole in the farm.
Absolutely, yeah. So crazy. Anyway, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, please, Paul.
Yeah, Daily Mail, nuclear sub warns off Putin spy ship. We see you. We know what you're doing. So a Royal Naval submarine surfaced yards from a Russian spy ship in a show of force to protect British waters, which is great. The nuclear-powered HMS Astute emerged from the depths after the Kremlin's Shadow Fleet vessel, the Yantar, was caught close to UK undersea cables. Now, they're an enemy. They're going to spy on us. It's always a worry when you hear this stuff, though, when you hear that they've just floated into your waters and they happen to be looking at our entire underwater infrastructure. So they could take us out. Of course, it's great the Navy responded. It's great the Navy there, so they're not going to do anything. It's reconnaissance, I'm sure. But the idea that they can just see it...
Well, I'm sure the sub wasn't armed. It probably couldn't have done anything. They just rock up. Hello, Russian vessel. Could you help us, please?
Yeah, and well, I mean, the undersea cables with all the internet, that means they might know what we've been looking at. I do love the fact that it's called HMS Astute, though. It's like when they're naming the teams on The Apprentice. They come up with these real good words, but it turns out that one was bang on.
Pretty astute.
The Guardian's got a couple of stories. One we're going to cover in a second, but what's this one about stop war or face tariffs?
Yeah, Trump tells Putin... Oh, now here's the thing, right?
Tell him.
Trump is threatening unspecified sanctions on Moscow, and they have to be unspecified because no one really understands what's not already been sanctioned. So hopefully there's something left on the list, because for a while now, everyone's been saying Trump only likes strongman politics. This is the time when this should be...
I thought he just liked strong men.
Maybe he loves both.
Don't we all?
But hopefully this is when strongman actually follows through, because he says he wants to stop the war, and hopefully he wants to get him around in the negotiations.
He said day one.
Day what?
It's
He's
now
already
day
late on
2.
that.
It's day 3, is it?
If he stops the war by like going, have Ukraine, that will be bad.
Yeah.
So you can definitely stop the war. It's the way in which you do it, either the strongman version or the weakman version. But when Trump was in office the first time, Putin was stronger. But now he's been in this war that he thought would be a few weeks long for years. Economically, not doing that great.
Lost 1 million people, 1 million people, Russians, and 700,000 Ukrainians. I mean, that's a huge loss of life. Of course, no one marching on the weekends.
Yeah.
No.
If you can't beat him around the table, then the only thing to mention here would be maybe the thing about the P-tapes is true. But I don't think it is. You know, the rumour that...
No, I've got those.
I think if there was actually a videotape of anyone weeing on Donald Trump, he'd own it, wouldn't he? Like, they're the best, they do the
reason what turned me on that whole thing was where he just said, look, I just wouldn't... it's not. He didn't say, like, I'm against that morally or anything like that, or it's disgusting. He's like, I just don't like germs. And I was that is a real response there to someone who probably didn't happen. But saying that, there is this idea of them being too close or someone having something over on... So there is this delicate issue where he is just going to be like, is Trump actually going to have an impact here? I like the fact that he sort of says he's going to do him a very big favour. He's like, if you do it, it'll be a very big favour. And it looks like the very big favour is I'm not going to, like, punch you in the face. Yeah, is the gist of it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's politics like we've not seen, obviously, since 2020. Donald Trump, he runs America like it's a business he's proud of. That's how it always feels to me. It feels like and he talks to people like Putin like he would do the CEO of a big business that he's trying to negotiate with. He knows how to massage him. He knows how to play to his ego, and he's trying to get him on board. And you can tell that by what's coming out of the Kremlin. They're not saying no, no, no. If Biden was saying that, they'd say no. But because it's Trump saying it, they're saying, well, we want to see what the terms and conditions are first, and then we'll discuss it. So I think there's hope. I think the problem is how it pleases people, because where do you draw the line? You know, do you annex Crimea? Do you leave it as it is? Do you row it all back? I don't know how they're going to sort that out.
No, right. Let's have a look at some more front pages now. The Eye, gotcha. Prince forces the son to pay out over £10 million. The son, Leo, 12, stabbed to death on way home from school. Tragedy there. And the Daily Star, Battle of the YMCA. Paul, let's go to this Prince Harry story.
Yeah, gotcha. Prince Harry forces the son to pay out over £10 million, and this is for
one Netflix documentary.
That is, well, it is indeed. It's for unlawful intrusion into his life between 1996 and 2011, and you can imagine it's true, and it is true, and it's a big payout. It's also a vindication for his late mother as well, obviously the Princess Diana, and also I believe Tom Watson, Labour MP as well. They had a bit of an intrusion into his privacy, so it's worth mentioning.
Are you a Tom Watson fan because that's your impersonation work?
No, I could do, couldn't I? I'm trying to lose enough weight to be, because Tom was really big. Tom, I don't know him.
Look at him,
Big Tom. Big Tom is not Big Tom anymore. But yeah, lots of things going on here. They're saying in the Eye, they're saying that actually the deeper battle is between Prince Harry and the King, and that's far from over, Josh.
I'm sure they are saying that, but to win £10 million, that's not bad. The interesting thing, it's been so long now since this all of that happened, and the Leveson inquiry and all. It's so far back in the news cycle, like more than a decade, really. Yeah. So it's sort of like it just feels we're over it. Like the shock is gone way now. Yeah, the unlawful intrusion was between 96 and 2011. So I mean, and imagine what he's got to moan about since. It feels like there's more that he moans about now than he did back in 2011. So wait for the next court case. Yeah. Well, let's go to the Sun, which I'm sure has an apology. Oh, no.
That's the thing, yeah. We thought part of it was, like, front-page apology. I guess not this front page.
No, but there is a horrible, horrible story here.
Yeah, they've gone with Leo, 12, stabbed to death on way home from school. There's not a lot of details because we don't know it, so it is...
And also, someone has been arrested, so we obviously can't get into it.
Indeed. Yeah, not only for legal reasons, but we genuinely don't have there. So at this moment, all we can say is what a terrible thing for those who are related to this person, how horrible that must be. And look, it's such a story that you can imagine, yes, it does deserve front page rather than sorry, Prince.
So I mean, I was joking about the Prince, and also they could put it in the corner, but to see the price of knife crime in general, we have a story about knives coming up, and a 14-year-old was killed a few days ago. There is a huge problem, and obviously something is broken somewhere, and I don't believe it's just because someone could buy a knife from Amazon or whatever. We have a massive problem in this country, and now the family is suffering, and a 12-year-old is dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic, terribly, terribly sad. Probably the third one this year so far of a lad of similar age. I'd say that there are a number of things going on in the background that could be done differently. Stop and search would be one of them.
Yeah.
And we're probably just going to have to face up to certain things, and being fair in the law can often be unfair to certain groups and certain people. But at the end of the day, if it prevents deaths of 12-year-old boys like this, then I think it's probably worth it.
We're going to do Amazon's story later, and we have the Daily Star. Battle of the YMCA.
Yeah, Battle of the YMCA. Original members of the Village People are at war with Johnny-come-lately members of the band for playing Donald Trump's inauguration. So we know, famously, the Daily Star are not big fans of Donald Trump, and they're obviously got some serious dirt going on here. They've been in touch with the original members of the YMCA. I didn't realise the ones that were prancing around on the stage this week weren't the original members. I just assumed they were. They looked old enough to be. But this is...
Look at you, Catty.
But I mean, this is actually almost journalism from the start, I guess.
What?
It's no boffins, there's no squirrels or seagulls.
No, there
or
is.
chips.
There's a boffins on the left. Sorry, we'll be covering later. Basically, the saving of mankind. They stick that. They do a big story about YMCA, and they don't talk about endless, unlimited energy. That's the Daily Star for you.
People care more about the YMCA than the Village People than they do Fusion.
But do you think that they, before we go to break, do you think that they deliberately hire old-looking YMCA people to make it look like... You don't want to stick a 20-year-old in there as a Native American or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And no one's really going to... No one checks.
So how do they find a 60-year-old plumber?
They're still working.
Who knows? Right, we have a little break now, some messages coming your way. We smashed the front pages, but we have plenty more cracking stories to come, including what is Rachel Reeves sticking it to the war heroes for? This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, you're 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with Thursday's Independent and Trump. We've covered him, so we're going to move straight on to the next one, which needs to be floated. The Telegraph has, Paul, I believe, a thing about Rachel Reeves and her landing strip.
It does. It doesn't specifically mention our landing strip, but I didn't read the whole story.
Well, she wants one.
Yeah, she might do. Reeves to face down Cabinet over Heathrow. So Rachel Reeves is preparing to face down the Cabinet colleagues over net zero as she pushes for a potential expansion of Heathrow. So this is the first decision that I believe Rachel Reeves has made that actually might lead to some growth. Now,
what, getting a landing strip?
Extra landing strip for Rachel Reeves, and in doing so, obviously, it's going to grow the economy in London. Heathrow's already our biggest airport. It's already one of the biggest, if not the biggest in Europe. But it's directly opposed to most of her cabinet members. So Ed Miliband, even Sir Keir Starmer himself, has previously said they do not want this third runway, and they're going to come down to a choice between: do they want to actually have growth in some way, or do they want net zero? And I think this is going to get more and more delicious, Josh, because there's going to be a lot of infighting on this, and often, and this isn't just to obviously, I'm not a huge fan of this Labour government, but this would happen under any government that was trying to deliver growth and net zero at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, this is governments want of the economy. What is their priority, as it comes down to? David Miliband, of course, is obsessed with net zero, and this government has made lots of commitments to it. But, of course, if it's impinging on the growth of the economy, which is really certainly her focus, that's her job, then, of course, there is going to be a battle here, isn't there?
Although you said David Miliband, Ed Miliband.
Oh, Ed Miliband,
you from the alternate universe where David Miliband actually got...
Those are the good days. Those are the good days.
But, yeah, of course...
I don't like to say Ed Miliband.
She's in charge of the money, wants there to be more money. He's in charge of the carbon-y thing, wants there to be less carbon. Yeah, they're just going into their own silos. But they're talking about the expansion of Heathrow, Gatwick and Luton. And just to exemplify, I think, the problem here, I don't live anywhere near Heathrow, but I do fly, so, yeah, go for it. Gatwick, don't live anywhere near there, so maybe pop in an next runway. I'm under the flight path of Luton, and I think it's big enough. I don't really know why you need... When I'm there, it's a vignette I like to call Not in My Backyard or NIMBY. That's just a low level. There are people who are bigger than that, the Not in God's Great Environmental Region. They don't use the acronym. But I think that's where the problem is.
Yeah, it's just going to be one of those things that drags on, isn't it? And we don't really know what these other costs are. It's like, what other things are hurting the economy that are because we are going towards...
It'd be interesting to see the numbers, Josh. It's a really good point because, anecdotally, net zero costs about £10 billion a year to the UK. Would...
10 billion?
10 billion, BNs, big time.
Now,
absolutely.
Is that taxpayer or is that loss of...
That's a whole bunch of things, but largely taxpayer money, loss of other stuff as well. However... we don't know what Heathrow are going to bring in. If it brings in anywhere near that, it's going to bring it in for a long time. It would be tremendous for growth. It would be. And there's no... any Prime Minister coming in and making any promises about net zero is essentially driving his economy into the ground. So this is one way of getting out of it, but, of course, it doesn't tackle net zero.
See what happens. Steve, the Metro heralds the end of all violent crimes ever.
Yes, they go with major retailer will start scanning your face if you buy knives online. It says if you want to buy kitchen knives online at John Lewis, you need to convince AI that you're 18. Well, I'll be done for then with this beautiful face. I'll have to run everything through a blender. What they do is they took their knives offline 15 years ago, and then now they think the technology's there where they trust the technology to judge your age more than a person. And it says in the article, it comes during a national debate on stricter checks after the Southport killer, ... It really is one of these newspaper journalism tricks of finding two things that are happening at the same time that actually aren't linked at all, but they're making it linked just for the headline. And there'll be ways around it. Kids will say to their grandparents, like, oh, play this game where you take a selfie. And, you know, you can scan it that way. The AI, is my favourite thing, does not tell you what age it thinks you are. Because this is John Lewis, and could you imagine they'd be bankrupt? All of these middle-class women of a certain age, they would end up hating John Lewis more than Greg Wallace.
That's the thing. I think that they should, and I think kids should be using it to see if they can get into nightclubs. Yeah. It's like, I don't really want a knife, I just want to see... Well, and the idea that, like, I don't know, that wrong ones are going to be buying their stuff from John Lewis, I find that a little bit...
Yeah, get the tool browser, that's...
Relating this to the Amazon story, though, it seems like Amazon does have these checks, or it has these checks in terms of there's a check on when you buy it, not the facial recognition, I believe, but there are checks on when you buy it, and also when it's delivered, there's a second level where you're meant to have ID. So it hasn't really been explained how Axel got this knife. At the same time, it also feels like a bit of a sort of detour to what...
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talked about similar stuff last night. We'll be talking about it for the rest of the week. And on a personal level, I feel like I'm colluding in this now just by talking about it. This is an utter distraction. Knives don't kill people. People kill people. Largely mentally ill people kill people. And they might do it with knives, they might do it with other things. And the fact that they're trying to conflate these two stories, like Steve was saying, to me, I'm just very, very uncomfortable with it. It feels like all of media has colluded. No, I'm not talking about GBNews here. I'm talking about the print media. They've all colluded with this distraction.
Yeah, it's very frustrating to see. But saying that, I'm all for more controls on knives, frankly.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone is against it.
Not forks, though. An Amazon spokesman said, we take our responsibility around the sale of all age-restricted items, including bladed products, extremely seriously, and have launched an urgent investigation in relation to this tragic case. We use trusted ID verification services to check name, date of birth and address details whenever an order is placed for these bladed items. OK, independent poll, and making children thicker seems like a strange educational policy.
It does. Labour's educational reforms, a tragedy in the making for pupils, claims Badnock. So Kemi Badnock at PMQs has claimed the government's proposed education reforms are a tragedy in the making for pupils, parents and teachers. Now, Steve and I were talking about this in the break, and the education reform bill, there is a lot to unpack. And you can tell just from PMQs today that Kemi Badnock is onto something, and you can also tell that Labour are not united, because all Keir Starmer did was talk about The Breakfast Club, which is great, but nobody is complaining.
Favourite film?
Nobody. It's a great film. 1984 or 5 is a great film. But nobody is complaining about introducing more breakfast clubs and helping starving children in the morning. But what people are complaining about, academy leaders in particular, are saying this is kind of unionising the academy schools, the school system in general, taking the power away from the academy leaders, they're saying it's effectively the wording within the bill caps their ability to pay teachers more. Bridget Phillipson is saying quite the opposite. And it's not really forthcoming. The truth doesn't feel forthcoming to me.
No, absolutely, and it's incredibly frustrating when you're trying to make a point about one thing, and then he's like, no, this seems to be Starmer's main sort of political get-out-of-jail-free court. Yeah, it's very annoying.
Yeah, I mean, that is politics in general, isn't it? That he would have been briefed, what's the flair? When someone goes at this question, what's the flair to pull so you can get a distraction over here? Look, I mean, I don't know. I've not managed to go through the wording of it to work out if it is a ceiling or a cap, or whether it's just a floor. They're saying it's just a floor, in which case, why do you even need to bring it? Are there academies out there trying to really...
Well, this is the thing is, it's more ideology brought into policy making, as opposed to, instead of let's look at the data and find out what is the best way of progressing for outcomes of education in children. It's like, what do we believe in, and we'll make it somehow fit.
And that's the problem with standardising the school system, is because you standardise the curriculum and then you are able to set what the curriculum is and just brainwash the next generation of children.
Brainwash, I mean, yeah, but we have something that works. And if you're going to choose something that's different, you better prove that it works better. Anyway, coming up, loads of top-notch stories to get our teeth into. Come back to find out which country just turned pedo and what part of a Chinese dystopia could be coming your way. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Evening, weather time now from the Met Office here on GB News. This time tomorrow, Storm Eowyn will be fast approaching, bringing potentially damaging gusts of wind during Thursday night and into Friday. Before that, tomorrow there'll be a spell of wet and windy weather, but before that, tonight, relatively calm. Some mist and fog patches, especially over eastern England, and a touch of frost per northeast England, much of eastern Scotland, and many places colder than last night, and not far off freezing to start Thursday. In the west, temperatures probably rising a little through the night because this band of rain will be moving in. It's going to make for a soggy start for Northern Ireland tomorrow. Generally, a calm start for Scotland, maybe a few mist and fog patches. Certainly a frosty start for many, particularly in the east. But there's that wet weather across Northern Ireland. Pretty miserable morning rush hour here, and that rain will soon be spreading to West Wales and southwest England. The winds also starting to pick up here as we go through the morning. Now, that could cause a few problems. We've got a Met Office yellow wind warning in place for West Wales, southwest England, and the wind strengthening along the south coast of England through the day as this band of rain moves through. Something we're not seeing for a while, so a spell of quite heavy rain, some snow over the hills of northern England and parts of Scotland also. Turning brighter for Wales and southern England come the afternoon, but a few showers moving in. Also turning milder, but it'll feel pretty cold again across northern areas, 5 or 6 degrees. But wetter and windier weather is on the way for Friday. This swirl, that's Storm Eowyn arriving Thursday night and through Friday. The strongest winds just tucked in here, Northern Ireland, southern central Scotland, northern England and North Wales. That's where we've got an amber warning in force as that storm moves through. Damaging gusts of wind, 60, 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour, maybe more in some locations in that amber warning area. But yellow warnings are also in place for wind, rain and some snow. Check out all the warnings for yourself on the Met Office website.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. On to the Express, Steve, and I'm starting to think the Chancellor is trolling us now.
They go with Labour votes to hit war heroes with Rachel Reeves' nightmare pension death tax.
That's going to win a lot of votes. That's a vote winner.
But I'm going to be really controversial here and say things that's going to get me hated online.
OK.
This is what I'm like. So, grieving families of military workers will be hit with the inheritance tax from April 2027 for the first time after they voted for it. And I know the mission we're meant to be like, Labour did it. Well, I must be wrong. Here's the situation that's going to be, right?
It's not my mission. No, if they do something right, I'll say it.
It's certainly the Express's mission. But if you're in the armed forces and after 2027 you die on duty from an injury or accident or other occurrence, the old rules apply. There will be no inheritance tax. The only change they're making is that if you're off duty and die through something that's just an off-duty thing, then the same will apply to you as would apply to us if we were.
No, but when they mean off-duty, what they mean is like you're not killed like an active duty, i.e. you'd say you're on holiday for a week and you find out you get cancer or you get run over, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's it. That's your.
Yeah.
That's
so if you're deployed and just not doing something at the moment, you still are considered as being on duty. Off duty would mean it's something that could happen to any of us, and then they're under the same rules that happens to
No,
us.
I disagree. Even then, I think it's a tiny, tiny little perk that's probably going to raise very small amount of money.
I agree with that.
And it's totally unnecessary. And we've got a recruitment crisis already into the army. And so what? It just like if you die off, if you're in the army and you die, I don't care how you die, you can have this little perk.
I grew up in Portsmouth, and that's normally not something to talk about. But on this particular occasion, so I grew up around the Navy and things like that. Anyone who served, and I really can't stomach policies like this because I think people who serve our country should be protected at all costs because they're putting their lives on the line. That's a very controversial thing to say. However, they will argue they're always serving. They're not paid 9 to 5, 8 to 4. They're paid to be available the whole time. So at no point are they not on duty. So I think this is semantics, and I think it's just poor politics.
It's like being a comedian.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think, I just point out...
No, Steve!
The Express goes for it, and the Express owned by Reach, the same people who own the Mirror, who would be so pro-Labour on this. It just shows you how this is just a game of journalism to try and turn the headline into the most shocking version of the truth. I prefer the truth rather than the shock.
No, I hear you, but I think that the actual truth is still shocking.
No, I think we agree it's bad optics. I don't think the headline's got it right.
Fair enough, fair enough. There we go. Agree to disagree. Steve's wrong. Express Steve, and all cultures are created equal, right?
Yes. Well, no. This one will make us all sick.
This one's grim. What are the Express doing here? Hey?
The Mirror wouldn't like this either. Iraq lowers age of consent to 9 years old with sick law to allow old men to marry girls. So much to hate here. Let's firstly correct the headline. They've changed the law to make paedophilia OK in good move for paedophiles. The Islamic courts will increase the authority, it says, including family matters, marriage, divorce and inheritance. I'm sure it's all going to be great for women, but specifically, the law currently states that 18 is the minimum age, but they're going to change it so that...
This is civil law.
Yeah, so that clerics can then have a say in this and interpret Islamic law, which some say allows children to marry in their early teens. And this is what gets me... I know this is not the biggest point, but as a maths fan... 9 is not an early teens number.
No. Then it says later on, but some authorities, the Jafari School of Islamic Law, follow that, and actually people as young as 9, and it has happened.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Mathematically, it's wrong. Morally, it's wrong. It says it's the Shiite.
Are you OK with 13-year-olds being married?
No, but okay. I'm doubly not OK with maths being messed with. It says Shiite authorities.
Yeah, maths is the problem, Steve.
It says Shiite authorities, which always reminds me of Oasis. We're at the front of this law change and argue that it would align with the principles and reduce Western influence. Oh no, you might be influenced into not marrying kids.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is disgusting. Paul, we've seen it coming. They've talked about this. I remember seeing a report on this a couple of months ago, and they've still pushed this through.
Unbelievable. If you've ever asked yourself the question, why are certain cultures disproportionately involved in sex crimes against children? This story gives you your answer. I'm afraid culturally, there will be people on our planet that believe this is perfectly acceptable for religious reasons, for cultural reasons. It's just not compatible with us, and to us, being brought up in the Western world, a civilised nation, this is abhorrent.
And I cannot say that better. Paul, let's move on to The Guardian, and a nasty bishop sounds like something my wife and I used to do in our
Fancy a little nasty bishop?
No, you be the nasty bishop.
Trump criticises nasty bishop who made pro-immigrant and LGBTQ+ plea. So in a lengthy social media post on early Wednesday, Trump called the Right Reverend Marianne Edgar-Boud a radical left hardline Trump hater. Now, a lot of people would have seen this yesterday. She stood up.
We've got a little clip.
Oh, great. OK, even better.
No, we're moving up in the world. We're doing...
Oh, wow.
There are gay, lesbian and transgender children in Democratic, Republican and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens.
This reminds me of exactly my gig on Saturday. That response there was pretty much identical.
We live in a free society, so do the US, and that's free speech in action. No problem with that whatsoever, but she hasn't got the memo, has she? Because God saved Trump so he could make America great again, Josh and Steve.
Yeah, I mean, that takes some cojones.
It does.
To stand up there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when she dies in a mysterious car accident in 6 months' time.
Well, the Clintons aren't involved. I didn't know that was a joke. Satirical.
But I was watching that thinking, you're barking up the wrong tree, love. I mean, it might be slightly wasted. With the look on his face, it wasn't going to change. I'm surprised by his response, though, because he didn't need to say she was nasty, attack her. He could have just reframed it as like, yeah, we're really caring, and what we are doing is caring. So I'm not sure why it had to be picking a fight. Because surely, from his point of view, he's doing all the right things. Yeah. All of the things that she says, he is kind towards.
Yeah, and also, by the way, the type of church that she belongs to, the diocese, it talks about the full inclusion of LGBTQ plus persons. I just want to say that includes pedos.
Yeah.
You're doing the full inclusion.
How did she get the gig, Josh?
Well, nothing like that, I'm sure, but I don't know what you're saying. All right, Mel next.
Mysterious ones.
Steve, is your social credit overdrawn?
Well, no, actually. China's dystopian social credit score that punished people for bad behaviour, such as traffic offences, as Labour moves to force Brits to store driving licences in digital wallets, as they've done it again. Two things happen and they go like, look, Labour are doing a thing, so here's something...
But it's twice the news.
Yeah, it is. I listened to this entire story and it went on for a bit. But it's things like if you drive badly, you can lose some of these points. If you drink too much...
But there are some that I agree with, like putting out cigarette butts, dropping cigarette butts. That's good.
Yeah, but things that you normally just got like a 60 or 80 quid fine for, but they've got this system where you lose a score. And I'm against it, but I read the whole thing and I'm like, I'd score really highly. I don't do any of these things. I don't drink. I'm pretty good at driving. I'm an excellent driver, to be honest, as some people would say. I also, that you get points for looking after your elderly relatives, which I did with mum and dad. I would be scoring so highly, but I will still be against this on behalf of you bad drivers, you late bill payers, you people who can't handle a pint and you late filler in other forms, the people who made this country what it is.
Well, this ties into this digital ID, this new government wallet that you're going to have on your phone and you can show your driver's licence. The two somewhat merged together here. There is the potential for this to happen. And it did play out in China, but I believe it didn't actually get fully implemented because there were problems with the system.
No, there were, I believe, some issues during COVID, for instance, where digital ID was able to track people on where they went and stop them going out their building too often or into somewhere else too often or whatever it might be. So it does read as a bit of a sort of endless, terrifying list of things that... you know, a country like China could do. I'm sure this is the sort of thing that gets Sir Keir Starmer excited in his alone times. I can imagine...
Really?
Yeah, I can imagine. Because I can imagine him being incredibly authoritarian if he wanted to be.
Well, I can imagine you being incredibly authoritarian if you wanted to be.
For money.
Paul, The Independent, with good news for disabled people. They too can now chuck what doesn't fit onto the floor.
I thought this was a lovely, wholesome story, John.
It is. It's a really good story.
Crop coats, stoma access and magnetic zips. Primark launches first ever range for people with disabilities. So Primark is to become Britain's one-stop shop for stocking up on cheap underwear and pyjamas, but it's now to be the first high street brand to launch a full-scale clothing range designed for people with a range of disabilities. This is Victoria Jenkins, who's a disabled fashion designer, and this is great. When I was reading this story, I was thinking, this is a lovely story.
You go in cynical, and then you're like, this is brilliant.
You know, I'm like, I can't believe it. Oh, no, it's brilliant.
Also, I'm getting the bounce back from the pre-Christmas weight loss because the Easter eggs are out. So the idea of, like, magnetic belt thing that you just do trousers clip up like that.
Yeah, and also
point.
It's got lots of, like, extra little pocket, like, zips and things like that. Or not zips, but for tubes and whatnot. But that could be useful, maybe.
You get a little itch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd be buying this.
Easy access to tubes.
Well, look, I think this is great. I think that this is a really good idea. She does talk about the designer is disabled herself, and talks about how the lack of representation. But this is one of those cases where if you don't, I imagine, work for a fashion house, you wouldn't think of all the different ways that actually clothing can be restricted and how you can help with some very simple measures. So
it's a great story. It's a sort of story we can all get behind. Fair play to the Primark.
Yeah, I just think it's brilliant, and I hope it's a big success. I think they need to put in some wheelchair access, maybe. But That's a joke. There's lots of real access in Primark, I'm sure. Right, coming up, one more section to go, and would you know it, we've held back some great stories for the hardcore headliners viewers. Primary school pay gap, and who is going to save TikTok? Find out in 2.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The sunshine will be returning to Cyprus, but still a few showers around for the next day or so. Much of mainland Greece, fine and sunny. There are those showers across Cyprus. They'll be clearing, as should the showers over Turkey as well. But remaining pretty mixed, quite cloudy over the Balkans, with a few showers in here and for northern Italy. It's been quite wet recently in southern Spain. More wet weather to come here on Thursday, and more showers to come across the Canaries. But it should be turning sunnier in Tenerife for the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life, passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans during the Second World War. He was working for MI5, but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah. Exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. And jumping into Thursday's time, Steve, for a story about girls not being able to break the crayon ceiling.
Yeah, pay gap.
Crayon ceiling!
Crayon is good. Pay gap starts class ceiling as well, you could have, because it would have rhymed with glass.
Oh.
Pay gap starts at 6. It's poised to demand bigger reward at schools, but they don't. So, firstly, that's not a pay gap. You're not paying kids. And if a 6-year-old demands something, say no.
Unless you're in Iraq.
All of this, well, they're preparing for the wedding. But here, what you've got is they did some research. kids did a thing and they could negotiate the reward, and it was like looking at pictures of animals, and then they say that boys are overestimating their abilities to negotiate way too high. Maybe they just like animals more, but what actually we find out from this is that boys negotiate harder than girls, but if you ask them for their opinion on negotiation, boys and girls both think it's worth doing and would pay off. The flaw here is that the girls then don't negotiate. If that's the start of the pay gap, then look at thyself.
So just basically boys are better, is that what Steve is saying?
I think Steve was saying that, which is, I think, quite a bold move, Steve. But all these studies ever do is prove that there are biological differences between boys and girls. Like, we didn't already know this.
Boys have willies.
They do.
Things like that.
All the ones I've seen.
You're stopping that there. You still haven't found out about the other ones yet.
One day. I mean, not girls. OK! Moving on. Daily Star next, Paul, with two annoying entities joining forces to be even more annoying.
Yeah, Mr. Beast enters talks to buy TikTok, but he's not alone in a $1 trillion scramble. Mr. Beast, by the way, is a billionaire YouTuber.
We all
he's
know
not like
we all know Mr. Beast. We're all big
But he sounds like the leader of like some sort of grooming gang, doesn't he? So the YouTube billionaire is
that
the
was
most...
his assistant, I believe.
Yeah. He what? No. Well, let's not do that here because I only know half the story. YouTube billionaire and most followed man on the planet, Mr. Beast, real name Jimmy Donaldson, has reportedly joined the race to buy TikTok. He's joined the race with a bunch of other people. There's investment groups. They're essentially valuing this thing, and there are Elon Musk potentially, which could be absolute lols. But they're valuing it at $1 trillion. But we don't actually know whether it's for sale.
Oh, well, I think they'd rather get $1 trillion than not. What's interesting is that if they pay for it in dollars, it's $1 trillion. But if they pay for it in pounds, it's only 811
Yeah, I know, he said that. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, I can get 811 quid.
Well, I don't think I can reach that far. But I feel so old with this story. People I've never heard of, doing things I don't really care about, trying to buy a platform I have no interest in. I'm so old.
You know who's massive on TikTok? GBNews.
Right? Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah, Farage is as well.
Farage is, yeah. We're huge on TikTok. Who knew?
Not me.
I'm still not going to join. And do you know that people are paying like $10,000 to buy iPhones that have TikTok now loaded onto it because they've stopped it, even though it's still working, they've stopped being able to download it. So people are so desperate to get it. TikTok, yeah.
You can download the Huawei App Store to install.
Daily Star next, Paul, with... no, is it Daily Star? No, it's The Independent, isn't it? Yeah. It's got a business that has really taken the sentiment, go woke, go broke, to heart.
So we're going with...
number 7. Ku Klux Klan.
Sorry, yeah, I thought that was with Steve.
I can do it.
No, Cruise Line insists staff weren't in Ku Klux Klan gear after fancy dress mishap. So, I mean, apparently they were dressed... Have we got a picture?
We do have a picture.
Because it'll be a lot easier to try to explain it. They're dressed as snow cones, apparently. This was in Australia.
Okay, there are.
Look at that.
That's what you wore on the way in.
This is what I wear all the time in the winter. Look. They do look a bit iffy. But this was on a cruise ship in Australia.
Is that Elon Musk expressing his heartfelt love?
It looks like it could be. But, I mean, I love these stories because, of course, nobody really believed the Ku Klux Klan had all gone on a cruise in Australia. No one had believed that at all. So they're apologising for nothing.
It's a different culture who's never heard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Exactly.
Well, you think, is it racist and you realise it was in Australia? So it probably was.
Nah, not at all, yeah.
Right, the show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. We have the Telegraph, 1 in 12 in London is an illegal migrant. The Daily Mail, nuclear sub warns of Putin's spy ship. Guardian, Prince claims historic win over Sun owner. The Eye, gotcha, Prince forces the Sun to pay out over £10 million. The Sun, Leo, 12, stabbed to death on way home from school. And the Daily Star, battle for the YMCA. That's it for tonight's show. Thank you to my guests, Steve and Paul. Headliners will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with myself, Cresta Wetton and Nick Dixon. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, weather time now from the Met Office here on GB News. This time tomorrow, storm